Hey guys. Okay, so in this week's video, what I want to do is kind of give you a bit of insight, let's just say, as to what I look at when I'm doing a detailed review on a property for a house-related project. Now, there's two things that I want to cover off first and foremost. Number one, I want to make it clear that I'm talking about a detailed review here. So this is not stuff that I can kind of cover off in those initial off-the-cuff 2-minute type phone calls or quick 5-minute type emails. Hopefully what you'll see from today's video is that there is a bucket load of hoops that you've got to jump through when it comes to doing a detailed review. So yeah, it's not something you can do just off the cuff. And then secondly, I want to make it really clear that we are talking about housey related projects here. So I have a totally separate checklist when it comes to development inquiries. So things like subdivisions, units, all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, today we are just talking about housey stuff. So this checklist has, I'd say, 3 key elements or aspects to it. First and foremost, it covers off town planning stuff, kind of obvious. Number 2, it covers off mistakes or what's the word I'm looking at? Lessons I've learned from the mistakes I've made. And I use the term mistake loosely because I genuinely believe everything happens for a reason and I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't made those mistakes. But yet the mistakes that I've made in the past, in my own property purchasing journey, let's just say. And then last but not least, the things that I've kind of picked up over the years through working with different consultants over the last 15, 20 years with ecologists, civil engineers, hydraulic engineers, all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, there's kind of 3 different elements that come together in this checklist. Now, the checklist is broken down into 8 separate categories. Within those 8 categories, there is a total of 25 different subcategories, and I haven't bothered to count as to how many individual items there are within all of those subcategories. So what I thought today was I could actually talk through at a high level what those 8 categories are and give you 3 examples from each of those different categories. And I have cheated here. I've written down my little cheat sheet or my list there on the computer. So I'm going to refer to that as I go through so I can kind of keep things on track and don't go and follow and go off on some random tangent, etc., etc. So number 1, current base planning stuff. So I'm looking at basic planning 101 stuff. So number 1, zoning. So does the zone on the property you're looking at actually allow you to do what you're proposing to do in terms of building a house? And then looking at the surrounding zoning. So next door, what can they actually do? Is your proposal conducive to what they can do? All of that sort of stuff. Next, overlays. So yeah, do you have a traditional building character overlay on the property that protects the house? Will that stop you from demolishing it and building that new house? Or do you have a flood overlay on the property which is going to require a certain height in terms of undercroft or require you to be built above the ground at a certain position? And then neighbourhood plans. So great example, West End Woolloongabba District Neighbourhood Plan, Sub-Precinct MPP 001. It actually has rules in there that require that you can't, in super simple terms, create a 2-story house. You have to keep the houses low to the ground and humble kind of looking. So yeah, that's the planning basics. Next, what we do is we look to the future. So category number 2 is looking at, okay, what could happen or change in the future when it comes to those planning basics? So number 1, we look at zoning, overlays and neighbourhood plans. Are there any proposed changes in the works? Is council planning to amend the planning scheme? Planning to amend the planning scheme? You get what I'm trying to say here. Make changes to the planning scheme, that's a better way of saying it, which would impact on what you could do in the future. So are there zoning changes, overlays changes proposed, all of that sort of stuff? TLPIs, temporary local planning instruments, that's the second example. So is there anything, and Maruka is a great example, they've just gone through this, the residents there know this well and truly. But yeah, are there any changes planned to the planning? Oh, I need coffee this morning. Are there any changes proposed, is a better way of saying it, to the planning scheme which would impact what you could do in the future? And then the last example I'll give you for this chapter or this heading is basically, is there any trunk infrastructure planned? So I had a great example of this the other day. I was looking at a property, I think it was Nunda. Yeah, it was Nunda. I was looking at this property and I was like, damn, there is a massive pipe plan through your property. Council's going to come through and upgrade the stormwater system to reduce the flooding through the area, all of that sort of stuff. Great for you guys because it's going to, in theory, reduce the amount of water flowing through your property. Not so great because they're going to come through and dig everything up at some stage in theory. So you've got to make sure any work you're doing is timed around that or accounts for those future works, because you don't want to pump a bucket load of money into something just to have to undo it a few weeks later, so to speak. Okay, so category number 3, we come to history. So first example, are there any previous applications on the property which could give you insight into what council does want to see, doesn't want to see? Has anyone tried to push any boundaries before? Can you learn any lessons from that? Then number 2, is there any impending construction sites next door? Any uses around that you may not necessarily have envisaged that you might want to be aware of? And again, great example of this recently, and I did talk about it in a video a couple of months ago, I think it was. I was doing a site review, had a look at a property, and boom, Mackie D's was popping up next door, and I was like, Yeah, wouldn't imagine that happen. Client, yep, they were like, yep, didn't see that one coming. Good thing to know, right? Next is submission activity. So you can go through Development Eye and work out, is the community very vocal? Are they very active? Is that likely to give you an indication as to what you might be up against if you're planning to do a renovation or a new build and all of that sort of stuff? Just good information to know. Next, we come to road stuff. So this is the fourth category. So we're looking at things like ARSs, access restriction strips, which are going to limit or control where you can actually get access to your property. Next is road widenings. So is council planning to widen the road to be able to get extra parking or an extra lane through there or something like that, whatever the reason is? And is that going to impact on where you can park on your property in terms of putting carports and all of that sort of stuff, or the land that you're going to have access to? And then lastly, under the road heading, the example I've got here is infrastructure in the verge. So do you look at the front of the property and is there like a water meter or a service, some sort of service pit, something in there which your driveway is potentially going to clash with, which is going to therefore in turn impact on where you can put your driveways or the amount of money you've got to pay to try and move services and all of that sort of stuff. Okay, category number 5, vegetation stuff. So have you got natural assets, local laws on the property, so protected vegetation? Or is there street trees, which technically is a form of now, but is there any street trees in front of the property that are going to restrict or govern where you can put your driveways, all of that sort of stuff? And then the third example that I give you for that category 5, the vegetation, is there any recent approval conditions which protect the vegetation? Saw this recently on a property at East Brisbane, I think it was. Yes, East Brisbane. What we found is there was a DA condition, I think it was like 15 years ago or something like that, which said this one tree at the front of the property. Actually, I also had another inquiry on a detailed review I did on a property at Wilston that had this exact issue as well. So yeah, long story short, both approvals, we found that there was conditions in the previous DAs protecting the tree in the front corner of the property, which then impacted on the options in terms of where carports go, all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, we're looking at that. Next, 6th category is services. Now, I'm always super duper clear here to say I'm not an expert when it comes to services. I'm not a civil engineer, but I've picked up a few things over the years and I kind of can alert you to some obvious stuff that I see. So the first example is combine drains. So are you on a shared sewerage network or sewerage line with your neighbour? And if you are increasing the demand on that line in terms of the number of bathrooms, all of that sort of stuff, is there a chance that you're going to be asked to break that combine drain? So fork out money to put your own property connection in there. Number 2, BOAs, build over assets, bit of a mouthful. So if I look at the property, do I see big stormwater lines or big sewage lines going through the guts of the property, which you're inevitably going to have to build over as part of any new house or renovation or anything like that? Is that going to cause extra cost, design restrictions, all of that sort of stuff when you get to the certification stage? And the last one, that example that I put under the services heading, was power lines. So if you turn up and you see there's a power line crossing over the corner of the neighbour's property to get to your property, when you go into a major renovation or a new build, it is likely that Energex is going to turn around and say, hey guys, you've got to put in a new property pole, or you've got to change things here to make sure that you're not cutting across the neighbour's property. Because these days they don't allow for that outcome. Now, number 7, we're almost there, random stuff. So the first example I wrote down was just easements and covenants. So is there an encumbrance on the property which restricts where you can build, what you can do, what your responsibilities are in terms of maintenance, all of that sort of stuff. Next, SARA. So does the state government have an interest in this property, or do they have an interest in an area around the property, and therefore are they going to control what you can do for fear of the impacts on their asset? So an example I'll give you, if you're close to a main road or facing a main road, they can actually, so when I say main road, I'm talking like Gympie Road, things like that, they can actually restrict or control or limit the number of access points or where you put those access points. So I'm talking driveways, things like that, which can have flow-on impacts in terms of house design, etc., etc. Last but not least under this heading is noise stuff. So do I look at it and see some noise mapping, corridor mapping, and go, hold on a sec, when you get to certification stage, there is a good chance that the certifier is going to turn around and say you need to upgrade your materials, like do double glazing or things like that, to meet their rules and requirements. Again, not my area of expertise, but I picked up a thing or two over the years and I go, ooh, I'm seeing an alarm bell here. You might want to ask questions of the certifier about this. Then, lucky last, category number 8 is the vibe check, man. Like, this one is so hard to explain because it's just one of those things, after like 15, 20 years of working in the industry, often you just look at a site and you go, something is off here. Like, I can't quite put it into words. And then you go down the rabbit hole of trying to work out what that weird and wonderful thing is. So some examples. The other day I was doing a property at Camp Hill, or looking at a property at Camp Hill, and I was like, the boundary alignment, there's something weird about this boundary. It just did a weird sort of kink. And I was like, that's non-standard. I've got to dig into that. I've got to find out why that is. Or another example is if you look at fencing. So if you go into Street View, and we've had this so many times, Street View, and you see the fencing doesn't line up with the boundaries, you might go, why is that? Do we need to ask some more questions? Or is there some non-standard sort of infrastructure? So you're looking at it just going, I haven't seen that before. I don't know what that thing is. I need to ask more questions. So there you go. There's the rapid fire of the 8 different categories and 3 examples under each category. As you'll see, what I'm doing essentially is looking at the property and going, is there anything, number 1, that's going to stop you from doing what you want to do? Number 2, is there anything that's going to impact on the design or the way you go about doing what you want to do? So where you put your garage, all of that sort of stuff. And then last but not least, is there anything obvious that's just going to be a cost blowout that's going to add massively to the cost of this whole project? Because obviously you need to factor that in at the start. And I guess the simplest way I can explain this is to say, I basically look at a property and I go, what would I like to know if I was going to purchase this property? What do I think is important? Would I purchase it, etc., etc.? And then I just share that information with you guys. So hopefully today's video, like I said, has given you some insight into what we actually do or check when we're doing a detailed review. As I like to say, until next time. Oh, okay, so as soon as I hit stop record on the phone, I was like, oh, I forgot to tell people where to go to get extra information. It was part of the plan, man. How could I forget that? So if you want extra information on this topic, what I'd like to encourage you guys to do is check out our Search Like a Planner post that we do every single month on our Instagram page and on the community tab on YouTube. So every single month I try and share a little tip there from our checklist. Also, if you want to go back, we have a heap of different videos on things that I like to look into. So if you go to our YouTube channel, load all the videos there on the page, you can keyword search, and you can find videos on things like ARSs, street trees. Like there is just a bucket load of information there. I think we're almost at 500 videos I saw yesterday, and I was like, damn, there's a lot of videos. So yeah, just that little bit of extra information for you guys. Wow. As I like to say, until next time, thanks for watching.
For all you red tape lovers out there, I have one thing to say. Well, no, actually, I've got 3. Number 1, the advice provided in these videos is general in nature. It's not site specific. You would be a silly Billy to go and make financial decisions based on this advice without first checking with the town planner. Don't be a silly Billy. Number 2, Brisbane town planning is in no way linked to Brisbane City Council. The views expressed in these videos are my own, not council's. So if you don't like them, blame me, not council. Number 3, what was my number 3? Oh yeah, the views expressed in these videos are accurate at the time of recording. If you're watching this video back 10 years from now, the views may not be so accurate. That's all. Bye.